is really sort of going to be, I think, most notably like late spring.
Yeah.
When I lived in Nevada, we used to say that spring migration starts on Memorial Day. Now that's not quite true, but the really exciting vagrants at the desert oases in southern and western Nevada and eastern California would be like early June.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and in fact, like again, I'm giving you a Nevada perspective here. Our yellow-billed cuckoos would show up, and they nest in southern Nevada like June 25th. I mean, that's how late the spring is out there, and that's fairly true of Colorado as well. We certainly get some really good stuff in late May, early June. As to the fall. We're in the middle, so we can get things from northeast, southwest, and sort of elsewhere. Certainly, this is a nice time of the year to find. Of course, we're looking for eastern vagrants here, but earlier, really. For fall stuff, I'd say late August, September, most of all. And then we get a really nice sea duck flight,
Really?
especially through the high country. Yeah, I know. So November is the time to head for the high country on the big mountain reservoirs that are still open and look for scoters and birds like that.
That's interesting. I have a talk that I've given to bird clubs here in North Carolina. That's like, just one of those fun, predict the next 10 birds to show up in North Carolina, whatever. And part of that was to kind of look at the past and see where all the previous first records have come from and where there are still kind of gaps in our list. And the overwhelmingly something like 60 to 70% of the first records of the last few years for North Carolina have been Western birds. Various Western breeding birds that have shown up here or have not shown up here. That and crazy pelagics, but like no one can predict.
Oh yeah, we don't have that effect out.
No one can predict those at all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the last two were Tahiti petrel and wedge-tailed shearwater. I don't think anyone was predicting those in the Atlantic, let alone North Carolina. Yeah. So we're getting a few folks here joining us to talk about birds and birding. Hello to all of you on our various social media feeds. We're excited to talk to you about birds. What we usually do here is this is sort of in conjunction with the ABA's What's This Bird Facebook group. If you're not familiar with that Facebook group, it is sort of a crowdsourced bird identification community. So everyone has phones in their pockets. Everyone has cameras in their pockets these days that take fairly decent photos of birds. And so people take photos of things that are unusual that they don't recognize, and they post them up on the group. And our community here tries to identify them to the best of our ability. We typically get a nice, interesting group of birds every week. And what we do here on these bi-weekly shows is take a look at some of the more interesting ones that people have posted and that I sort of grab in the last, hour before we start doing this. And we'll talk a little bit. We'll talk through those identifications. Talk a little bit about why the birds are what they are. And of course, you out there, if you have any questions about bird identification or birding, I'm trying to keep track of all their various social media feeds. To take those questions, please let us know. The Facebook one is a little bit weird this week because Facebook has changed up the way that live videos go out into groups. It is actually on the ABA's Facebook page, the American Birding Association page. So if we do not see your comment in What's This Bird or ABA Birds and Birding, where this is also going live, please just click on through to the main feed and let us know there. I've posted a little comment there saying, hello, everybody, welcome. And you can comment that way. So I apologize for that. If you have any issues with that, please blame Mark Zuckerberg. But Zuckerberg will blame him for everything else anyway. As far as I know, YouTube and Twitter are the same as they've ever been. So Ted, with all that sort of ado, shall we jump into the birds, the bird identification? I sent you a handful of photos, and
yep. Let me pull that up.
Let's do it. Let's do the thing. I'll let you get that up.
All right. I got it up.
It should be a bird from Georgia, a photo from Georgia of a bird in flight with kind of a long pointy wings and a short, squarish, maybe with a little bit of an indent tail. So I posted this because my first impression of this was this could be any one of two two groups of birds that sort of are seen this way. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why it is what it is. Ted, what are you looking at when you see this bird? What's the first thing that jumps out to you?
Sure. And before I answer or attempt to answer your question, I'll just sort of issue my usual caveat here that, and Nate sort of alluded to this already, that there's no planning here. Nate has not told me what these planning. Are. Nate and I have not communicated. I'm seeing these for the for the first time.
Bird identification by the seat of our pants.
It's interesting. You said two groups. I was thinking, well, one group comes to mind, and then a whole bunch of others come to mind. I always like to sort of take that really big picture view and ask, like, why isn't this? I'm being facetious here, but why isn't this a sharp-shinned hawk? You said a short, square tail. Remember the old mnemonic, flap, flap, sail with a short, square tail. It's not a sharp-shinned hawk for a bunch of reasons, but as to why it's not, that's perhaps not immediately obvious. So, to me, this is a swallow. What's the other group you think it is?
I thought swift maybe was sort of like, why is it not a swift? My first impression was swallow as well. But it's, those are both birds that you see a lot of with kind of long pointed wings and a relatively short tail.
Sure. That's fair. And they fly around, and they're both, they're both aerial insectivores. A swift to me would have, longer, more bowed, sort of arc-backed wings than this, and they wouldn't sort of be sort of kinked or crooked at the bend of the wing there. So I think we are looking at a swallow, not a swift, and definitely not a sharp-tailed. A sharp-shinned hawk. No. So first impression, what do they say? First thought, best thought, Allen Ginsberg. I actually go to a rarity on this one. I may be way out to lunch on this, but this looks like a cave swallow to me. It's Jesse said it has a short, square tail, so we're not looking at a barn swallow. Short, square tail to me suggests cliff swallow or cave swallow. It's got that kind of buffy, fairly pale, buffy throat. I can sort of see some of that black mass coming in there. Oh, let me back up on swallows. It's got a really small bill. That's like a great mark for a swallow. That's like why this is not a woodpecker or a hawk or something like that.
The proportion of body to wing would sort of rule out a lot of the other passerine families.
Yeah. It's just got sort of too much color and contrast below to be color below to be like a tree swallow or a violet green swallow. The shape's all wrong for barn. So I think we're in that cliff cave area. And I may be totally wrong on this, but why are you thinking rough winged or?
My impression was rough wing.
Oh yeah, okay. So I think
it's a brownish looking. I see what you're talking about. Like the sort of contrast is a little bit more than you would expect for a rough wing. Like when I think of a rough wing, I think of it kind of that nice gradient of brown all the way down, kind of well into the chest and sort of the upper belly. I think the brightness of the sky is sort of doing us some disfavor.
Okay, yeah, and I started getting second thoughts, doubts about that as well as I was going along. I am sort of keying in on all this color here. Rough wing is, of course, a very colorless bird here, but I can sort of
the wings look in particular like really colorful, and rough wings tend to have very plain wings.
I should say that rough wing would be much more likely in Georgia at this time of the year as well. So, but my mind did go to cave swallow. And again, remember, folks, I'm seeing this for the for the very first time. One thing that I'm just noticing here, and I'm seeing this just for the first time, and I assume this is just a function of molt here, is that outer primary on both sides is very short, and the second to outermost primary is quite long. And I do not have an interpretation for that. That's something we probably would not notice in the field, but I wonder if there's something going on there as well. So I think you sort of talked me into rough-winged swallow, Nate. It's curious to me how cave swallow came to mind first. I always say this, I'll say it again. In real life, we would see this bird from above, where
and moving
cave
too,
first.
Which I think is sort of an underrated field mark for swallows.
Yeah, like for swallows,
they all sort of move a little bit differently from each other.
Yeah, so caves and cliffs have that. I sort of sometimes hear it described as sort of like a roller coaster like flight, sort of that sort of almost like gadfly petrel like kind of rising, falling. To me, rough wings are kind of more just powered flight, sort of long spurts going in one direction or another. So.
Yeah, and the pale. I mean, this is getting into more detail, and I'll be honest, I'm looking at Sibley, the Sibley app right here, just to make sure, because when you said cave swallow, I was like, oh, geez, I probably got this wrong. I need to look at a field guide to make sure that my impressions are correct. But the rough wing does have these sort of the pale bases to the flight feathers on the underside.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, cool.
this bird, I mean, I do think there's some photo trickery sort of going on here
Mm-hmm.
with this bird.
Sure,
It makes it
sure.
look a little bright, but you do see those pale bases to the flight feathers all along the underside of the wing there. So yeah, I mean, I do think rough winged is the call here. But
Hey, at this time of year, especially in North Carolina, it's a great time of year to look for rare swallows.
yes,
And briefly, my mind just turns to the ABA area's first southern rough-winged swallow or something like that. I don't think that's what. Yeah, so I from above, I'm trying. How does that go again? The ruff is paler, and also I think the southern rough-winged swallow have like buffy or undertail coverage. And I'm kind of just like almost making this up as I go along here, but I suspect that southern rough-winged swallow can actually be ruled out from this photo. I just don't remember exactly offhand how to do it. So.
Alex Cruz Jr. in the Facebook notes, clean. I mean, Tim, both of them actually. Tim Callback commented as well. Clean white undertail cover. It's probably a little odd on a cave swallow. And then Alex says the same thing. The clean undertail, good mark to rule out. Tree as well, of which there are a lot of this time of year and throughout the winter frequently in the southeast United States. We get tree swallows in huge numbers, and it is in fact in those tree swallow flocks that you do sort of want to look for those more unusual swallows. It is a bit of a birder I don't know, a nightmare to find a rare swallow in a flock of tree swallows and get a glimpse of it, and then in the swirling mass, like never ever see it again, which happens.
And that's a big problem for us actually looking for the rare cave swallow in a huge mass of cliff swallows. So it's so easy to see hundreds and rarely thousands, well, very low thousands of cliff swallows in southeastern Colorado, and you get them that I'm sure I saw a cave swallow, and then it joins the mass, and right.
Yeah. For a long time, we worried that our state first violet green swallow would be in the midst of that giant flocks of tree swallows, and then like you'd see it and you'd see the white face, and then you'd never be able to find it. But fortunately, that bird did end up being at a lake near Charlotte, and
cool.
Like people got pretty good looks at it because there were only like 5 swallows on the lake, so.
Oh, cool.
Thank you to that bird. All right, shall we move on? It is
let's move away from this swallow in flight. Okay.
And for much of the country, this is, or the ABA area, I should say, this is sparrow season. So a lot of people have been posting sparrows on the in the ABA What's This Bird group, and so I sort of grab a sort of nice one here. This is a weird angle for sure. I'm not super thrilled about that, but there are some things to kind of look at here. It's very, very plump body, pale bill, relatively short tail. I'm not sure whether that's foreshortening. My impression is that is actually a pretty accurate impression.
And Nate, I'm sorry, we're looking at a bird from Virginia, right?
Yes, this bird.
Oh, okay. Make sure I'm on the right bird. Cool. Okay,
yeah, I don't know. Did you want to like talk about why it's a sparrow and not like?
No, first I wanted to make sure I was looking at the right bird. So yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a sparrow. In fact, I have a feeling I know which one it is, but we'll get there later. I again with the streaky brown bird, I always have by myself asking the question, like, why isn't this a purple finch? A female type purple finch. I don't think it is. The streaking isn't nearly diffuse enough. The pattern on the face isn't also sort of as broad and diffuse enough. But with a bird like this, why isn't it a pipit? Well, the reason it's not a pipit is because the bill is not nearly long. I have seen pipits in trees. It could be a tree pipit. Yeah. So but with that conical bill, the fine streaking, the general lack of color puts me in the large sparrow family, Passerellidae, which is like 65 species, maybe in the ABA area. It's a very, very large group. But to narrow it down into the sparrows of Virginia, you already mentioned the short tail, which, I know about foreshortening, and that could be happening here, but sort of fine streaks on the breast. So my mind, again, first thought, best thought, maybe first thought, worst thought, goes into the Savannah sparrow realm here. That bill kind of pinkish, bright, the short tail, the fine streaking. We want sort of for our Savannah sparrow to have maybe a more brownish head with some yellow in front of the eye. I'm not seeing any of that here, but lighting and an extreme variation in Savannah sparrows. That's the other thing as well here. So I kind of like some other birds do come to mind. I mean, Vesper sparrow just would be coarser, longer tailed, more of an eye ring. Lincoln sparrow can look very kind of
Lincoln
streaky,
sparrow was my
fine.
thought, especially given the extremely fine streaking on this bird.
Yeah, I don't think it's a Lincoln's just because, okay, I'll be wrong, but there's just not enough warm buff across the breast. There's not enough eye line. To me, in the head, even in weird lighting, the head of a Lincoln sparrow is just going to have those foxy, rusty, darker colors. Oh, it's a longer-tailed bird too. So I could see.
I think proportionally, Lincoln sparrow does sort of it has more of a song. Well, it makes sense. It has more of a song sparrow shape. It's in the same. It's in Melaspiza, so it is with the song sparrows. But it's kind of got a larger head, I think, in comparison with the body, at least to my eye, and of course a longer tail, although not as long as the song sparrow.
Yeah. Hey, just to be fanciful,
do it.
I still think it's a Savannah sparrow. Like, I mean, Baird sparrow kind of has that general plump look about it, fine streaks below, the kind of complex, patterning on the face. Again, I wouldn't expect a Baird sparrow in Virginia for starters. I wouldn't expect one perched up nice in a tree like that. They have that kind of ochraceous color to them, and the exact patterning of the black on the head is different. But this is sort of a dissatisfying ID for me in the sense that, like, I'm not so much saying that it's definitively a Savannah sparrow as that I can't make it into Lincoln's or Vesper or Purple Finch. So I'm kind of left with Savannah sparrow for this one.
Yeah, and I hate to there's some conversation in the comments here.
Oh, cool.
Because this is kind of a weird photo, because there was another photo of this bird, and I'm going to try and throw it up real quick.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to replace this one. Boom. Replace it with this photo that came in of this bird. And I'm going to send it. Should I send it to you, or can you? Oh, how am I going to let you see this, Ted?
I don't know. I could turn Slack back on real quick.
Yes, and I'm gonna send it to you via Slack.
Okay, so let me, folks. Sorry
Bear
for
with us, folks. We are trying to deal with the million technology.
All right.
Doodads.
Okay, so Nate is going to Slack me a photo. Okay. All right.
All right. And this is the photo that we're showing on the live feed as well. It's the same bird. Evidently.
Okay. I got to make it. It's a thumbnail for me here now. It currently looks a bit like a hermit thrush or something, but let me, here we go. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, right.
Just goes to show, what lighting can do to you. So. Well, I see less of this bird here. It's still plump and short-tailed, fine build. Yeah, I mean, if people are thinking Lincoln's on this, the breast doesn't do it for me. I'd want to be more finely streaked with buffy. If that's where the conversation's going, I may be wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think here's another one that I'm going to throw up.
Okay. All right.
And I'm sending it to you.
Okay. And folks, I'm seeing these for the very first time.
This is like birding with Ted.
All right.
Here you go. Just slacked you.
Okay. Okay. Let me make that a little bigger.
So you see me moving this stuff around. I apologize.
Yep. I know it doesn't have the yellow piece in front of the eye. It doesn't. I still can't do anything other than Savannah with this, and I may just be guilty of sort of having gone to, my mind is stuck on Savannah. I can't get out of it. It looks plump, short-tailed, fairly fine builds, sort of a slight build overall. I concur that the face doesn't look great for Savannah, but it doesn't look great for Lincoln's or Vesper or whatever else might be in consideration
think
here.
That the confusion species might be Lincoln's on this bird, just based on what the photos that we're seeing. Because that second one in particular does sort of give it a. I'm going to pull it down just a little bit. Does sort of give it a very song sparrow impression, but not enough. Like Lincoln's and song sparrow are quite different birds.
Going back to the original image, which does deserve to be part of the equation as well.
Yeah.
And it looks like the best photo, by the way. So there's something to be.
Agree.
Yeah, the best quality photo. I would be shocked to my foundation if this proved to be a Lincoln sparrow. Now, I make mistakes all the time, and that wouldn't shock me to my foundation at all. But in this particular image, the one that you showed me first, the one that says Virginia in big blue and white letters there, although it could possibly be talked out of Savannah sparrow because I'm just not thinking about some obscure plumage of a rare sparrow in the east that I'm not even thinking about. It just doesn't say Lincolns to me. But.
Well, there are a lot of savannas around, and it's interesting because I was actually looking at Savannah sparrows when I went out to get that Say's Phoebe that I was talking about earlier. That area is a really good place for Vesper sparrow in the county, and which has been something of a nemesis bird for me in the county for a very long time. People seem to find that bird out there all the time, and I never find it. And but I did see a bunch of Savannah sparrows, and yeah, they're awfully streaky and they're awfully varied.
They're highly variable.
And, yeah. And I sort of agree with you. I think that short tail, I just don't see enough for it to be a lynx spear, even with the other images. But like you, I have been wrong before.
And,
all right. Well,
my I think it's a sparrow in the family Passerellity, and I think it's a Savannah sparrow. But by the way, I've been saying this from the beginning. It's a somewhat uncomfortable ID, but
yeah. Timothy Condon and YouTube asked, why not Vesper?
That's a good question.
I think especially with the good photo that we had at the beginning there, we would definitely see an eye ring on a Vesper.
More of an eye ring
face. And
they're very fresh at this time of the year. They've molted. They're long-tailed. They're big. They're robust birds. They look kind of sort of longer, and I don't just there's more to them. Pretty coarse streaking, usually pretty coarse streaking below. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, tentative link. I don't want to spend too much time. We've got some more birds.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry, tentative Savannah, not link. But yep. So we'll move on. We'll do some geese, Ted. I know you love geese. I'm choosing two here that came through. They both look sort of superficially similar, but rather different. Both from the same part of the country too. We're talking about New England.
Okay, so we're starting with the Connecticut bird, right?
Connecticut goose.
Yep.
The goose from Connecticut.
Okay. Well, 20 years ago, this would have been absurdly easy. It would have been a Canada Goose because that was all these were 20 years ago. But in the early 2000s, the Canada Goose was split into two species, the Canada and the cackling. They are essentially identical in plumage. So we're dealing with one of those two birds here. The much more common bird in Connecticut is the Canada Goose. My guess is this has been put up here because it has some cackling-like structures.
Precisely.
It is it has a nice sort of thick, fairly short neck, a steep forehead, and actually a fairly longish Canada-like bill. I'm sure there's some enthusiasm out there for this bird being a cackling goose, and probably a Richardson's cackling goose. So that's what we call the nominate subspecies Hutchinsii, which is the biggest and most Canada-like of cackling geese. I would eBird this, sorry folks, as cackling / Canada, the combo here. We have especially in my part of the world, this smallest of the Canada geese. I've always thought of it as the subspecies Parvipes. eBird is now calling it canadensis. I don't quite know how that happened, but I can't really rule out a lesser Canada goose in the subspecies Parvipes with its neck just sort of squinched down and its forehead uptight like that. Now, give me 15 more photos and I might change my mind on this, but I would call this a candidate cackling that I just wouldn't be willing to pull the proverbial trigger on. And I would not be surprised at all this proved to just be a Canada, and I would call it Canada / cackling. But I'm not comfortable with this one photo being called a cackling goose.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would note that here in the eastern part of the continent, we do have those lesser Canada geese. They, in fact, winter in some numbers in eastern North Carolina. So I see them when
and it's interesting how the wintering distribution of all of our what we call white-cheeked geese has changed so much in the past 20 years. I'm thinking of the massive increase, for example, in cackling geese in and the Western Plains. So I didn't know that, and I'm almost curious to know if that's sort of a new thing. Of course, people are paying much more attention to goose subspecies than they used to, because you have to deal with the differences between cackling and Canada. And, I'm not sure it's clearly a Canada or cackling goose. I would lean Canada just because it's the vastly more expected species in Connecticut this time of year. Hey, just a fun point of bird biology. That bird's got its eyes closed, and you can see its feathered eyelids there, which is just a really cool sort of a thermoregulatory feature of the Canada goose or the cackling goose. They're able to withstand incredibly cold temperatures, and they're so well insulated, so much so that even their eyelids are feathered, which I think is really cool.
Alex Cruz Jr. notes, does the color of the breast help?
Mm-hmm. So I used to think it does. I don't anymore. But going back 20 years, we're still working this out, but we were more primitive in our knowledge. Whether there was like that little white band between the neck and the breast, and whether some of the cackling geese are darker breasted, but then there's the dusky Canada goose is actually dusky breasted. So it's a good question. I think there are average differences, but I would say no, not really.
Yeah. All right. And it's important because I have this next bird from a similar time of year, similar place. Yeah. This is Massachusetts, just nearby. And it's rather similar, Ted.
Yeah. Something that's interesting is, I'm just going back to that, the lighting's quite different here, which is fine. That's the way it is with taking pictures of birds. Yeah, I mean, this almost has that kind of like barnacle goose, like, pure black and white to it. It's not a barnacle goose.
Yeah, it's much grayer and less kind of brown.
Yeah. What I also like in this image too is I've got 3 other geese to compare it with. That's actually a very useful thing to go with. So this bird is actually looking better to me for a cackling goose.
Yeah.
It's dumpier, it's smaller, it's even shorter and thicker necked. It's even sort of stubbier build, and there's that really nice demarcation, that nice angle, between the base of the bill and the base of the forehead. I can't see myself, relaxing this bird and making it look more sort of smoothly sloping. So it looks small. And look at the bills on those other presumptive Canada geese there.
There's some Canada geese sort of in the shot as well.
Yeah. So this all does add up to me to cackling goose. So that's a nice bird for Massachusetts in October. So, but it looks smaller than the other birds. Stubbier bodied, shorter bodied, short thick neck, short thick bill, good angle with the forehead. So I'm good with that as a cackling goose.
Yeah. I would certainly agree with that. George Ziders asks, what are the predominant species in the northern Midwest of cackling versus Canada? I'm not exactly sure. I have birded, I'm from Missouri. I've birded in southern Missouri and Kansas somewhat extensively, and there are a lot of cackling geese in that area, as well as Canada geese, and they're in mixed flocks. So I don't know which one would be the prominent species. They would both be there in some numbers.
If Greg Neise were here, because he is in the northern Midwest, he could give the very definitive answer there. I'm actually. It's a question just Canada versus cackling. Which do you expect more of?
That's how I interpreted it. Yes.
Okay. And then I need to know what's sort of meant by northern Midwest. But
right.
I'd say
I don't know, Michigan, Wisconsin.
Okay, so I'd go for Canada certainly would I outnumber cackling there. You get those huge pulses of cackling sort of. Well, yeah. Now we're
getting a little
you're changing the goalposts on me here. Yeah, but for Michigan, I was really liking the sound of Canada there. You made it easy with Michigan. But the distributions of these birds are complicated, and they're changing. Not only is our knowledge of them changing, but but where they're wintering is actually changing. So cackling geese are short stopping their wintering grounds with the sort of warming and drying of the climate and more food farther north, and we're just getting many more cackling geese in the sort of southern and central parts of the Midwest in winter than we used to. But yeah, I would say if I understand northern Midwest correctly, Canada goose outnumbers cackling goose, and then you do have to worry about which population of Canada and cackling goose you're getting, because that complicates identification as
Tim
well.
Hahn drops in and says in Wisconsin, which I think is fair to assume that is that is pretty northern Midwest.
Yeah, so more Canada geese than cackling geese, but
yes,
certainly,
it's cackling geese will be mixed in with flocks here and there. That seems to be my interpretation of them, even further south in Kansas and western Missouri. Yep. Mostly Canada's, but it's not hard to find a cackling goose if you really want to find one.
Yep. Hey, and just a pitch for a winter tourism to the plains of eastern Colorado. Why would anyone want to do such a thing? No, I'm joking. But if you want to see sometimes up to 6 digits of cackling geese, eastern Colorado is a good place to be, sort of like around Halloween till about Christmas. It's amazing how many cackling geese are there at that time of the year.
Jim Fiermeyer on YouTube notes for these 2 geese that we've been talking about. The bill on this one, this Massachusetts bird, is less than half the length of the head. The first one was more than half the length of the head.
Ah, good.
Yeah, it's another interesting thing to note. Yeah, one of those things that you might not be able to, when you're looking at the bird in the field, you might not think of, but it's sort of an intuitive thing. Like you would say, oh, the bill looks long, the bill looks short compared to the length of the head. And
that's a great good point.
Interesting note. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Tim. Everybody who is commenting, thank you very much. We certainly like this this bird conversation. This vivid, vital. The word that I'm searching for is not quite
vibrant. I don't know.
Vibrant.
Vigorous.
That's the word I was looking for. Some
V word.
All right. So let's move on. Here's one from Illinois.
Okay.
Yes. A warbler. Back to warblers. We're sort of on the back end of warblers, at least here in the eastern 2/3 of the continent.
Yep.
The
so I'll just
out, but there are a few around, and this is one from mid-October.
Just a predictable comment from me. I agree with you. It's a warbler. I think I know which one it is too, but let's just briefly say, why isn't it a vireo or even a goldfinch or something like that? So this bird is small and dainty, very long winged, short tail. From what I can see of the bill, since I think I know, it's just not a honking big bill. It's definitely not a goldfinch with a bill like that. But a brightly lit bird like this, ruling out, let's say, warbling vireo, is not an immediately obvious thing to have done here. But that said, I agree with you. It's a yellowish bird.
The wings are long, the tail is short, the bill is very slight. All of those things are certainly in favor of a warbler as opposed to a vireo, which tend to have much more longer, lankier bodies, and much more prominent eye, much bigger, thicker bill, at least the ones that I typically see around here. But warbling vireo would be something to think about for this bird, because superficially, at least as far as the plumage is concerned, they look rather similar. When we're talking about late warblers, there's a couple to think about. Orange crown starts moving through, and I think that was one of the candidate species for this bird, as it's relatively plain overall, got a bit of an eye ring, kind of overall greenish, though not a ton of gray on this bird. And of course, the difficult bird with that is Tennessee warbler, which do linger. They're long distance migrants, but they do tend to linger into late October, even early November. Sometimes you will see them before they completely clear out. But the orange crown Tennessee seems to be the big, the green, overall greenish plain warbler, no wing bars. Those are the ones that I'm thinking out when I'm looking at this bird.
Sure. By October in Illinois, and I'm correct, this is like the past week. Is that right?
Yes, most all of these.
Yeah. So in general, we're thinking, orange crown warbler, perfect time of the year, and the Tennessees are mostly clearing out. And by the way, at least from what I can see here, it's got nice sort of yellow undertail coverage, which is a classic orange crown mark. However, I don't think this is an orange crown warbler. And the reason for that, it's all the structure on this bird. So really long winged and really short tailed. And it's just the opposite on orange crown. So orange crown is a quite long winged bird and rather short tailed.
Other way around.
Other way around. Orange wing is a very long tailed bird and relatively short winged bird. And this kind of,
so it makes sense.
Right. So that, yep, exactly. So just the structure, I'm kind of joking with what I'm about to say here, but like if you took all the color out of this bird, it almost might make it an easier identification
That's
because
true.
that structure is so distinctive for Tennessee. It's a very long distance migrant, so it has those very long wings and that relatively short tail. The other thing too is I like that kind of a bright greenish tint to the upper parts. I know there's a lot of like just yellows and greens coming into this photo altogether, but an orange crown just wouldn't be so greenish above.
More olive. Yeah, kind of a deeper gray or browner green than kind of the more bright yellowy green that you'd see on a Tennessee Warbler.
But yeah, to me though, that wing, those long wings and that short tail just can't be an orange-crowned warbler.
No, I actually had Tennessee Warbler earlier this week. One kind of hanging around. They're funny because you usually think of them as like treetop warblers a lot of time in the spring, whereas this one was, hanging around in this dense grassy area with a bunch of sparrows and palm warblers.
Yeah.
Which is another late warbler, but have very long-tailed on palm warbler and tends to be a little bit more streaky. The face, the pattern on the face, that eye line eyebrow combo is in a lot of palm warblers. Yep. Vorticity 4 notes on YouTube. Long primary projection, which is what we talk about when we're talking about those long wings, means long distance migrant. Yeah, absolutely. Form follows function.
Yep.
Or function. Form follows function.
Form and function are related to each other.
Yeah, that's the better way to do it. All right. So, we got a couple more. We'll move on. I know you've got a thing at 2:00, Ted. I don't want to keep you.
No, we're good. So now we're in California, right?
Before we move on, if any of you have any sort of questions about birds or birding, please let us know in the comments. We're happy to take those as we go. Just want to note that if you please, you can ask us at the end. You can ask us now. I'm trying to keep an eye on all these various places where this is streaming, to nab them when they come through. I just want to remind people watching that if you have a question about birds or birding, please, if you'd like Ted to expound upon while we have him here, we're happy to take those. All right, so moving on to the next photo. This is one from out west. This is a California bird. We can do both of these birds because I think that they're both sort of interesting here. Looks like they're at a feeding station or a water feature. That one in the back though, that's a fancy looking bird there, Ted. It's not one that I would necessarily expect to. Well, maybe I would, but it's not one that a lot of people in the rest of the continent are going to see at their feeders in their yards. Yep.
So my guess is we're somewhere in the Los Angeles basin for this photo.
Southern California, yes.
Yep. So that bird with that huge black bill, and it's a very small bird. That's we'll say for the time being that's a house finch in the foreground, but it's as small as or smaller than that finch in the foreground.
Literally everything in Southern California.
Yeah, but a small bird with a huge bill, and then the kind of that rich chestnut hood or cowl, and then a scaly breast, or let's say, just spotting and scaling on the breast there. So
it's almost the color of nutmeg.
So this is a bird. Thanks for saying nutmeg. A bird whose name is constantly changing, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't even know the English name anymore, but I know the scientific name is Lontura punctulata, and I grew up calling this nutmeg manakin. I think it's scaly-breasted munia now, but I might
scaly-breasted munia is the official AOS.
Is the official AOS name?
Okay, list. But yes, nutmeg manakin. It was not all that long ago, and spice finch is
and Lord knows how many sort of avicultural names as well. But yeah, it's a small, very large build. We say finch, but a different family of finches from our finches. These are one of the estrilded finches, I think.
Like the manakins in the neotropics, a different mannequin with
right. It gets tricky. Yes. mannequins in department stores. But
exactly.
So
anyhow, in the
the conversation disintegrates further. No, but the small, large-billed bird with, as you said, nutmeg on the head and scaly patterning on the breast is what I think is, as you just said, now called the scaly-breasted munia. So it's not indigenous to the ABA area. It has been established and is well established now in the Los Angeles basin. It occurs elsewhere.
All the way down to San Diego too. I mean, they're pretty common.
Yeah, and but and we have actually multiple established Munias in the ABA area now, in Hawaii, in California, in Texas, especially around Houston. I think bronzed or bronzy, I can't keep the names straight. Tricolored, possibly a invading non-indigenous population from the West Indies.
Tricolored Munia or mannequin, tricolored Munia.
Munia.
The only vagrant to the ABA area that was a vagrant of an introduced population. So it was introduced into Cuba in the Caribbean, and it vagrated to southern Florida. I don't know if there's any other bird that's...
Eurasian collared dove, kind of, although we're not really sure exactly how it got to Florida either, so it's hard to say. But yeah, so anyhow, we're in the Munia group. I think, and if Greg were here, he would absolutely, get me on this immediately. I believe it's the only, no, that's not right anymore because of Hawaii. But in the continental United States, I think that scaly-breasted Munia, actually, that's not right. Tricolored Munia is on our list now. Yeah, based on good. Never mind. Let's cancel everything I've been musing about for the past 30 seconds. So anyhow, in Los Angeles, for sure, and really sort of Southern California, the scaly-breasted Munia, also known as the nutmeg mannequin, also known as the spice finch, always known as Lonchura punctulata, is a common and increasing established member of the avifauna, especially sort of in kind of weedy open areas, often with I picture concrete, trash,
that's where I got my,
water,
people
engaged in partially questionable activity, like the LA River or somewhere like that. That's really the sort of place where I would expect to see these. They're not generally going to be in downtown Los Angeles. They're not going to really be in sort of upscale parks and not out in the foothills or anything like that, but kind of just where there's a little bit of water, a little bit of weeds, a little bit of concrete. That's sort of the place I expect to see them.
Yeah, I saw mine, my life scaly-breasted Munia in my ABA scaly-breasted Munia in San Diego, and it was exactly as you describe it. It was some not the nicest park in the area, but we kind of walked back, and there was this concrete where a river is sometimes. And then they were coming to a feeder there. We have a really good question here from Alex on juncos that I'm going to save till we get after this last bird that I have here, Ted, because I know you are a junco fan.
No, we're good. Sorry, but this bird is not a junco.
No,
junco
this
question.
bird is from Idaho. This bird is a large. I assume that it's large.
Okay.
It's a photo. It appears large. It has long, broad wings and a strongly hooked bill. It just, I get the impression of weight from this bird. I would be shocked if this bird was small, I guess, based on the proportions of the body. So we have a raptor here from Idaho.
I call this a raptor, and I guess it's from Idaho. And again, sort of the mind goes straight, at least my mind goes straight to a particular raptor, and that raptor is a golden eagle. Mm-hmm. It's got a golden wash on the nape, which is a good mark for all golden eagles of all ages, young birds, old birds, the juveniles, that they all show that. This bird is, it gives that impression of being quite ponderous, eagle size. I think that those nicely sort of outstretched primaries out there help to convey the sense that this is a very large bird. Some of our biggest raptors, California condor is especially notable in this regard, but golden eagle, bald eagle, they actually kind of create extra wings by splaying and spreading out those outer primaries, which are quite big feathers. The surface area of the primary of a golden eagle is quite a bit bigger than the surface area of entire smaller birds like the ones we just saw. So that conveys that sense of a really big bird. With golden eagle, this is I think it's a younger. It's a younger bird. It's got some white at the base of the wings, and then also I think there's some white at the base of the tail as well there. So the question of an immature bald eagle always comes up. Yes. So just a quick taxonomy lesson: the bald eagle and the golden eagle are not closely related within the hawk family at all. The bald eagle is a sea eagle. And the golden eagle is one of the so-called booted eagles or aquila eagles. They're called eagles, but they're not closely related. So a bald eagle would be proportionally bigger headed, bigger billed, shorter tailed, than this bird. So
the
that
wings are a bit broader too.
Yeah, yeah. Also, and I'm just sort of seeing this at an angle here, so the bird's probably in flap, but bald eagle is such a flat, straight-winged flyer as well. At a distance, so in Colorado in particular, we get a really nice mix of golden eagle, bald eagle, and turkey vulture. The confusion species isn't bald eagle; it's actually turkey vulture.
Yes.
A distant turkey vulture and a distant golden eagle, because they're often like up in the same habitat in the rocky foothills. They're the ones you're going to confuse with one another. The bald eagle, and I'm talking, obviously an adult, it's clearly an adult bald eagle with the bright white head, but it's a big-headed, very, very big billed, relatively short-tailed bird. You could almost imagine, if you sort of got rid of some color on this bird, the bill would have to be a bit different too, that it could be a turkey vulture. So that's another consideration. Anyhow, I think it's a golden eagle. One thing I should quickly note is that, there are other dark, large birds out there, like, dark morph Swainson's hawk, which can sort of resemble this bird. But I think that the massiveness of the bill, the white under the wing, just general ponderousness of this bird rules out that dark morph Swainson's hawk. So I go to golden eagle. I would even age this bird as it's older than 1 year old. I don't think it's an adult, so we'll call this a second or third year golden eagle.
Yeah. We look for golden eagles here in the eastern part of the United States, usually towards the coast. There's a population that breeds in Quebec and eastern Canada. That migrates down here and spends kind of their winters tooling around the East Coast all the way south into South Carolina and Georgia sometimes, but usually not much further than the Albemarle Peninsula of North Carolina. But I've seen them in Virginia, and they look like turkey vultures. They fly like turkey vultures. Their proportions, with the exception of the head. They look kind of small-headed like turkey vultures too. They're not quite as absurdly small-headed as a turkey vulture does. But they're rather similar, quite different than from a bald eagle, which, as you say, is a much more ponderous, broad-winged, larger-bodied, massive-headed bird. Yeah.
You mentioned the golden eagles breeding in northern Quebec, and I guess there's some hope that they may eventually reestablish in the Northeast. They used to breed in like New York and I think Massachusetts. I think there were a couple of recent attempts. Need to get Derek Lovich on air here, but in Maine, no more than attempts. Like I think they successfully nested in Maine not too long ago. So I mean, there are plenty of places in the Appalachians that look like they ought to be.
Camera traps have found them in the southern Appalachians as well, in Western Virginia and West Virginia and Western northwestern North Carolina. They're not quite as common as they used to be. They used to be sort of annual there, but I know that they've been seen. They're a bird that can turn up just about anywhere in the West. I mean, it's illegal, obviously, and they move quite a bit.
There's some rugged, remote places in West Virginia, where I think that golden eagles could be supported.
All right, Ted, that's the end of the birds I have for you. I do have some questions here that are popping up on Facebook that I want to get to, including
and
one
don't
about
forget the junco, right?
The junco, that's where I was going to, because I know that you will wax poetically about juncos for some time.
Or wax
Alex
something
Cruz
about
asks
juncos.
a question about dark-eyed Oregon juncos. Let me roll up again. What is the best characteristic to distinguish from different types, sexes of slate-colored? He usually thinks of the sharp demarcation on the grayish hood to the brownish back, where the brownish back does not creep up to distinguish Oregon. But with so much variation, wonders if it's safe to even call a female type Oregon junco. Right.
So, and the question, and by the way, hi Alex, is we're just talking Oregon versus slate colored, right?
That yes, but the question with the female Oregons, and this is something that we see in the East every time when people want to call them, is that there's a ton of those kind of mishmashy birds kind of in the middle where they interbreed.
Sure.
Sometimes they're called Cassiar junco. Sometimes there are other subspecies as well. Those can be really, really problematic or really, really troublesome.
Sure. So the first thing you have to establish is that there are subspecies of both the slate colored and the Oregon junco. So even though we refer to those bigger named as subspecies groups, and I believe there are two subspecies within the slate colored subspecies group. There's like an Appalachian one and then everything else. And then within Oregon there are at least I think a half dozen subspecies. So the problem is, just as Alex is alluding to, this broad area in central Canada where were slate coloreds and Oregons introgress, that they exchange genes with each other. And yeah, there's that name Cassiar junco. The scientific name is cismontanus. So those birds are called junco hyemulus cismontanus. And it's not just sort of this like really narrow grade of zone of intergradation, tens of square miles. It's like thousands of square miles where they co-occur. So they're intermediate in appearance between slate colored and Oregon. And then the females, and especially the immature females, are just that mishmash. I can tell you I e-bird an awful lot of junco, just dark-eyed junco or slate colored slash Oregon, because I just don't know the answer to that question. In terms of separating the males, the adult males, that's not going to be a problem. The Oregon has that sort of executioner's hood with the very nice brownish flanks and the sort of warmish tones overall. And the adult male slate color is that beautiful, just sort of almost uniformly gray-black appearance above. One thing I like a lot, and I think Alex might have been alluding to this, is the way that the dark on the breast blends with the white on the belly. So it's sort of a concave downward, very round and smooth look on the Oregon, and sort of concave upward, sort of coming from the sides of the flanks up toward the sort of like a pinch point across the midsection on the slate color. But again, that's for the males. For the immature females, I just don't know how you can separate an intermediate immature female from a slate colored immature female. They look very, very similar to each other. So use that slash category with pride because a lot of those birds really cannot be put in one group or another.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned our Carolina slate colored juncos here that breed in the southern Appalachians. People right. They have gray bills instead of pink bills. They're very neat birds.
Yeah.
If anyone else has any questions about birds or birding, we're happy to take those. I'm kind of keeping an eye. Vorticity4 and YouTube notes that of the golden eagles, they tend to flap more than turkey vultures within the same kettle.
Yeah, and it's a very sort of slow, powerful, ponderous flapping. The word, it's like flap doesn't almost do justice to it. It's more like this, sort of like deep whoosh or something like that. Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, Jeff Williams asks, do the ruby-throated hummingbirds divert around the Appalachians in the late fall to avoid colder temperatures? I'm not a hummingbird expert. I know there's a lot of hummingbird people out there. I don't know the answer to that. It would not surprise me to know that they sort of stay away from that sort of stuff. Hummingbirds are diurnal migrants, aren't they? They're not nocturnal migrants. So
they migrate by day. And by the way, they're hardy, though. I mean, consider this is a bird that weighs 3 grams and flies nonstop across the Gulf of Mexico. I'm talking about in spring here, sometimes in a headwind and in a rain. And I've always marveled at the cardiac aspect to that. Like, how can so small a bird migrate so long and so far? I read a really cool physics paper just in the past year on the mechanical marvel of that. That like if you were to challenge like an engineer to build a self-powered 3-gram object and had to get all the way across the Gulf of Mexico in a rain and a headwind. Like we actually can't do that. And that's using, synthetic materials. And this is like, fragile biological material. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you told me that, and I'm being very facetious, just sort of silly when I'm saying this, but a banding station atop Mount Mitchell, recorded, dozens of, high flying ruby-throated hummingbirds. A total joke. I'm not proposing that's really the case, but they are great flyers, despite their diminutiveness.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people seem to think that they're so fragile, but obviously Rufus hummingbird, which is fairly robust as far as hummingbirds go. They breed as far north as Alaska. It's a pretty phenomenal. It's certainly they deal with some difficult temperatures when they're up there.
Yeah. So I have a feeling you or I have dropped this trivia point in one of these conversations before, but the Rufus hummingbird migrates farther relative to its body length than any other organism on Earth. So I know that sooty shearwaters and Arctic terns migrate farther, but not relative to their body length. Also, just I have to quickly add that you mentioned Alaska. They've actually crossed the Bering Sea. It's the only hummingbird ever recorded, as a naturally occurring vagrant to the Old World is actually Rufus hummingbird. So the records of Rufus hummingbird from the Russian Far East.
Yeah. Deb Tursky asks, Ted, do you have a reference for the engineering paper about the hummingbirds?
Yeah, thanks. So a friend sent that to me. I need to, Nate, let me, I don't know how
Send
to
it
do
to
that.
me. I will put it in the comments.
Okay. Yep. Cool.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll do. Okay.
Susan Nelson notes she had a dark-eyed junco just an hour ago on her deck rail in southwestern Tennessee. 'Tis the season.
Yep. This is southwestern Tennessee. So, probably slate colored, but,
Yeah.
Cassiar, as we call it, possibly Oregon. Yeah, you're getting southwestern. Yeah, you're getting close enough to the realm of sort of some western influx there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Moving through, hummingbirds surprisingly tough. Susan notes when you're doing rehab.
Yeah,
it does not shock me in the least. Seeing what they have gone through. Ted, I know you have a thing at 2:00. I don't want to take you from that. We have been doing this for an hour now.
Yep, always fun. Time flies here.
Absolutely. Before we go, I will say that if you enjoy these sorts of free resources that the ABA provides, please have a look over at it's over my left. I always get this wrong. Maybe pointing the wrong direction. I need to make to the aba.org/join. It's at the top there, and please consider joining the ABA. We have memberships at a number of different levels, including e-memberships, where you get your birding magazines in your email inbox. And of course, if you're interested in listening to people talk about birds, check out the American Birding Podcast. We have new episodes every week. Ted is a regular guest on that as well. Ted, it was a pleasure. Thank you to all the folks who have been watching on our various social media channels. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Smash that subscribe button if you're on YouTube. If you want to be kept abreast, we're also part of our flight calls. We send a message out for our weekly newsletter and from the ABA and flight calls to let you know that we're doing it every other week. So we'll be back. It may be Greg, it may be Ted, it may be Ted and Greg. Who knows exactly what the combination is going to be. There'll be two of us in 2 weeks. We'll see everybody then. Adios, everybody. Bye, Ted.
Nate, thanks for having me. Thanks for humoring me. Thanks everybody for humoring us. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Cool. Great. Cool. Yeah, no, always fun. And I'm happy to sub. And yeah, I do need to get over to my net